I'm John. Welcome to my first video for this course. So we're going to be looking at a bunch of examples. First, on errors. When you get an error message, how do you understand what it means and fix the problem? Second, we're going to look at a few programming tips that should help you when you're writing your own code. So here's our first example. Let's run it and see what happens. It starts to print out this message about the volume of a cube, but then has a name error saying that volume is not defined. Okay, and it highlights the problem line here, where in fact we are using the function named volume to do our computation. But where did I define volume? Well, I didn't. I defined volume cube. Okay, here I should be calling volume cube. So let's fix that. Okay. So now let's run it again and make sure, oh, whoops, we have another name error. This time I used the name SIDDE here in this line instead of the variable name SIDE, side. Okay, so a typo here. Okay. So running it, finally it works. So notice that we get a name error when we misspell either a function name or a variable name here. And don't have a definition of that name. All right, let's see what happens with this next example. We'll run it, and well, once again, we get a name error here. Name random is not defined. So, well, we're trying to use random.randrange to roll a die. What's the problem here? Well, here, let's go to the documentation. Okay. And we can scroll down here to the random module, and it tells us, well, yes, random.randrange is right, but whenever we need to use it, well, yeah, import random, we forgot that, and it tells us up here, you know, whenever we're using anything from this module, import random. We forgot to do that in our code here, so let's add that. Yeah, we didn't provide that definition of random, that it's a module here. So let's try this again, running it, and it works fine. It rolls our dice, and each time we get a different value for our pair of die. Well, let's see what's going to happen in this one. Here, this time, we get something called an attribute error. Module object has no attribute pi. Okay. So it's highlighting here where we use math.pi. I did import math this time, I remembered that. So what's the problem? I thought pi was defined in there. So let's again go to the documentation here. And this time I'm going to go to the search feature here and just type in pi. And we get lots of examples, but here is math.pi. And it tells me, well, it's defined, but it's lowercase pi. Okay, in my code here, I used capital Pi. Our names are case sensitive, and I misspelled it. Okay, but when you misspell, you know, the part after the module name, okay, you get an attribute error. So let's try this again, and it worked. Good. For our next example, let's try computing the area of a triangle here with this code. So I can run it, and oh, I get a type error. Area triangle takes exactly 2 arguments. After all, it takes a base and a height. 1 was given. Well, let's see where my code is, where my call is. Area triangle B, yeah, so there's only 1 argument there. I gave it the wrong number of arguments. What should the other thing be called? Well, I also have the global variable h here. I should be passing that in. It's going to complain to you anytime you give the wrong number of arguments. Too many, too few. Okay, so let's try that. Should work. Oh, type error again. Can't multiply sequence by non-int of type number. What the heck? So I am trying to multiply stuff here. That's as appropriate. Let's also look at this part of the output. Area of triangle with base 5 and height 2 plus 2 is... I thought my height was 4 here. I told it 2 plus 2, and add those together, you should get 4. Oh, the problem is that these are strings, not numbers. Strings and numbers are not the same thing. In fact, that's where the message here is coming in. A string is a kind of a sequence. That's why it has the word sequence there. And you can actually kind of multiply strings in some sense. But that's outside of this example. Okay. What I want here is a number, and I want this to be a numeric expression that evaluates to 4. So let's get rid of the double quotes and try again. And good. That's what I expect now. So next here we have a little function that's supposed to simply check whether we're giving it Mary, and if so, it gives us a message that yes, it has Mary, otherwise no. Okay, so let's try running this. Okay. Syntax error, bad input on line 1, quote, and then quote down here on the next line. Okay, so it tells us there's a syntax error, where it is, roughly, on what line. Okay, and the fact that, well, it's trying to tell us here that it's at the end of the line, where it's encountering a new line. Okay, and so here it's just kind of giving us a new line there. Okay, so that is hinting that it must be at the end of the line here. And in fact, we forgot to put the colon on here. Remember, every function header ends with a colon, just like every if here ends with a colon, else ends with a colon. Anytime that you're going to start a block of code. Okay, so fix that. Let's see it run now. Oh, another syntax error. Bad input on line 2 now. Okay, we have if x is equal to Mary. There's something wrong with that equals. What's wrong with that equals? Now let's go back to the documentation here, and let's try comparing things. Let's see, where would I find something about comparing? So comparison operators there. Let's see. Oh, the comparison here is double equals, not single equals. Okay, very common mistake. Single equals is assigning a variable. Double equals is comparing two things. Okay, so let's try this again here. Oh, name error. Name Mary is not defined. Oh, okay. Yeah, down here I gave it, well, Mary is not defined. I meant to pass in just a string. Okay. Here, note the color. Okay, this is kind of useful here. So in this code here, where we have some strings, note the strings are color-coded red, and this is not color-coded red. It's just black like any other name. And well, notice over here we actually have purple stuff too for keywords. Okay, notice when you're typing whether things are turning out the color that you wanted. Okay, and so here, basically just another kind of syntax error. I meant to give it a string instead of a variable name. So let's see if I'm good now. Oh, good. It found Mary, and then Fred, well, is clearly not Mary. So fixed it. All right, so now let's turn our attention to code style and readability. Okay, so here we have a little function called area, and what the heck does this compute? I'm not really sure here. Maybe you wrote this a month ago, or somebody else wrote it, and well, you've got no idea what it does now. So what should we have done? Well, we should have done several things when writing this code. Okay, so first of all, we should give a better name to this. Okay, instead of area, it's computing the area of what? Well, you might recognize this as it's actually computing the area of a triangle given 3 sides. So I'll say SSS for side, side, side. Okay, so that gives me a better idea of what this says. And in fact, another way of describing the function here, standard Python convention says that the first thing after the function header should be what's known as a documentation string, which is just a string, but traditionally uses 3 double quotes here. And so it's going to describe what this function does, longer than just the function name itself. Okay, so this is going to return the area of a triangle given the lengths of its three sides. Okay, so for longer documentation strings, you can frequently write it like this, okay, so that it's nice and readable. Okay, so that describes what it is supposed to do. Okay, of course, this is some weird formula here that you might not recognize. You know, it'd be nice if we also notated for somebody here that this is using Heron's formula, okay, which is a well-known thing. Look it up. But notice that I'm using a different kind of notation here. I'm using a comment rather than the documentation string. The documentation string describes what this function does. It computes the area of a triangle. Okay, and this comment here internally is describing how it's doing that. Okay, it's using a particular formula, or it's using this particular strategy. Okay. Well, still this looks like a lot of gobbledygook. It would have been nice had I used better variable names to understand this a little bit better. So let's go through and rename the variables consistently. Instead of A, B, and C, maybe it'd be nice side 1, side 2, and side 3, let's say. Come down here, be sure to rename them consistently. Notice also I'm adding in some spaces here as I'm going through just to make everything more readable. Okay, I'll add some spaces here too. Okay, be sure to get all of these names here consistently. Otherwise you'll get some other errors. Okay, and let's see, S. Well, notice that it's adding up all of the sides and dividing by 2. In other words, it's half of the perimeter. So this is actually short for semi-perimeter. So I'll call that semi-perim here. And I'll rename that consistently as well. Okay, and add in some more spaces. This is getting kind of long. Maybe it'd be nice if I kind of broke this line up. Let's come over here, break up the line there as well. Okay, add in some more spaces for readability. And there we go. Okay, so that's more readable, and you know, all of our names are legible, and it gives me a much better idea of what's going on in this function. And so now if somebody else has to read it, or if I have to read it in a month from now, I think I might be able to understand it then. So this little program here is supposed to tell us, you know, what is the favorite thing of our various instructors. So Joe loves games, that's this course. Scott loves ties, as you should be seeing from his videos, and I love the outdoors, but, well, I'm here in front of a computer all the time. So, well, let's run it, and, well, it reports that I love the outdoors, but, Jeannie, my wife, who's not an instructor, none? Where's that none coming from? Well, first of all, you know, note that because Jeannie is not one of these options, it doesn't meet one of these branches here. It just follows through, and at the end of the function, there's nothing left to do. So it just returns a special value called none, which signifies that there's no value there. Okay. Well, that seems kind of strange. And in particular, in a larger program, if this was just a piece of some larger thing, you'd probably have a hard time tracking down where the problem was. Okay, so we'd like to have some way of saying, hey, something's wrong here. You gave me an invalid input that I wasn't expecting. And so here is one really simple way of doing it. Just make sure that each of your ifs has an else case. Okay, else, okay, some other value of instructor is here. Let's print out a message. Favorites saw invalid instructor, and here's our value Genie. Whoops, instructor. And so we can run that, and it gives us this message saying, hey, this function saw an invalid input. Now I know where to look and where the problem was.